Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. It's Tuesday, so that means it's going to be our waiver wire show, another edition of Wavering. And I'm going to be joined again by Logan Glaser, contributing writer here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. We're going to help you get ready for that all-important waiver wires that's going to run this week on all of our sites. So I'm going to bring Logan up now. Logan, thanks so much for joining me again. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thanks for having me on, Jeff. Yeah, week one was something. There was a lot of breakdown, lots of really good games from the NFL. I can't even count how many missed field goals there were. There were so many, but week one was exciting.
Definitely exciting. A lot of fun to watch. From a fantasy perspective, too, there's some good scoring games as well. It wasn't super high scoring, but some definitely big performance by some players and some performances by players that maybe weren't on people's radars. We're going to point them out here on the waiver wire, right? Right, Logan?
For sure, along with some injuries as well.
Yeah, definitely injuries that are going to play a factor as well. That's always the case. Before we get into these waiver wire picks, so we are still running some leagues. If you want to get in leagues on our site right now, you can still do that. We're going to run them for another couple weeks. We have DFS as well. So if you want to get in more leagues, there's still time to do it here at Real Time Fantasy Sports. All right, Logan. Let's bring up these waiver wire picks for this week. Let's go into the quarterback spot first. Give me a couple guys that you're looking at for this week.
Yeah, two guys I'm kind of targeting. This is mainly if you had like Dak Prescott or you had a quarterback, but I like coming into the end of this week with one that you have rostered. But if you have an injury or something like that, I'm looking at Carson Wentz first, and then also Jared Goff. They are actually going to be facing each other. Both of them are about 30% owned in our sites. Carson Wentz is actually finished the number 3 overall quarterback after fantasy week 1, which is very surprising for Washington. He threw for 313 yards, 4 touchdowns, and Washington had a lot of breakout wide receivers. I mean, McLaurin had a long bomb touchdown, and then you also had Jahan Dotson break out as kind of his first game in the NFL, and then you also got Curtis Samuel in action. So I really like Wentz this week as a pickup if you currently don't have a quarterback on your roster. And then also with Jared Goff, he's going up against Washington. I expect this to be a high scoring overall game between the two teams. Both of them had pretty high scoring games week 1. Lions put up 35 points. Lions have so many different options, and that's kind of why I like Goff. I mean, you've got Swift, you got Hawkinson, you got Amon, who had a great week as well. There's just so many different options, and they need to get the targets, and Goff will supply those. So I like both of those options at quarterback in week 2.
All right, for me, I like those calls, Logan. I have Marcus Mariota up there. I thought he had a solid first game against a good Saints defense. He scored 23 fantasy points, but most notably for me were the plays he made with his legs. So that's going to give him a high weekly floor. He had 72 rushing yards and a score running the ball. So I think that gives him a good high weekly floor. He's available in 80% of leagues on our site still. So I kind of like his potential in this offense, especially with the Falcons saying they were just going to let Desmond Ridder sit all season and watch Mariota. I'm not sure if that's going to come true, but either way, when Mariota's in the lineup, he's going to make plays with his legs, and I think that's a good deal for fantasy teams. So I would consider adding him if you're looking for a number 2 or even a spot starter, like you said, because of injuries to someone like Dak Prescott. Another one for me is Baker Mayfield. So he scored 2 touchdowns last week, threw for 235 yards. He scored 21.4 fantasy points. I thought he looked good with that new offense that he's in, with a lot more playmakers than he ever had with Cleveland. I think he's going to be another good spot start for fantasy teams along the way as well when he's in the right matchup. He's out there in 66% of leagues also, so I think he's going to be a good, decent spot play throughout the season. Another guy we consider adding if I had Dak Prescott and I'm looking for somebody to fill his shoes. All right, let's look at running backs now, Logan. How about a couple running backs that you're going to add? I know one of them on your list is going to be on everybody's list. He was on mine as well. I had to pivot, but I'll let you talk about him.
Yeah, 2 running backs I'm going to be looking at is Jeff Wilson and then Rex Burkhead. Wilson is obviously probably going to be the number 1 target for all leagues for teams looking at adding a player through the waiver wire this week. I like Wilson because he's going to be taking over for Mitchell as the running back 1, but I'm not absolutely in love with him. He kind of has struggled almost in that running back 1 role for San Francisco, especially like last year. Mitchell was down. They also have Mostert as well last year, but I would probably feel comfortable spending about 15% of my league's fab on him through the waiver wire. Anything more than that, I think it would be kind of overvaluing picking up Wilson, just because the 49ers, they use several different options to run the ball. I mean, Trey Lance ran the ball so many times in the last game, along with Deebo Samuel and end arounds. They just use unique ways to get the ball in players' hands, and it's not more of a traditional role like most teams with just handing it off to the running back. They use that unique format. So, and then the second one is Rex Burkhead. He was probably the biggest surprise to me for week one with how much he played. I mean, I still can't even believe he's still in the league. It feels like he's in every single year, but Rex Burkhead had 14 carries and 5 receptions, and he kind of took over that running back one role for Houston in that game just because with the game script. Damian Pierce came into the game kind of heavy favorite to be the running back one just after his monster breakout preseason, but they handed the ball off to Burkhead. So Burkhead is currently only owned in 18% of the leagues on RT Sports. So I would feel a little bit scared starting him still in leagues, but he would be a nice bench spot, especially with buys coming up if he still gets that workload.
Yeah, I agree, especially because he's going to catch passes. I think that helps his weekly floor, so it gives him some value, even if Pierce ends up, vaulting him pretty good and getting a lot more carries. So I still think Burkhead's going to get some work. Couple guys for me, Jaylen Warren with the Steelers. So first of all, the Steelers' offense running the ball did not look good. That offensive line did not look good. Najee Harris had his issues, but he's banged up. He was banged up even before the season started. He got hurt in this game. It sounds like he's going to play this week, but I just think he's kind of a ticking time bomb at this point. You got to wonder if he's going to miss some action. They're just going to have to sit him out at some point. So if that happens, Warren's the next man up. He had a great preseason. He got a lot of hype. He moved up to the top backup role for Pittsburgh. So again, I worry about that offense in the running game, but if Warren's starting and Harris has to sit out at all, I think he's going to have good value because he's going to catch the ball and it's going to give him some good total yardage potential. And he's still available in 91% of leagues on our site. So especially if you're a Harris owner, I would go grab him. And if you're not looking for a guy to fill out your bench, I would consider adding Warren this week. Another one for me is Dontrell Hilliard. I forgot to put that picture up there of Warren when I was talking about him, but here's Warren. So that's what I was talking about with him, with Najee Harris hurt, might not be able to play this week. But even if he's playing going forward, Warren's the backup, and he could get some action if Harris has to sit at all. So my other pickup is Dontrell Hilliard with the Tennessee Titans. He's Derrick Henry's backup. He's not going to play a ton, but it looks like he's at least going to have that pass catching role. And he scored 2 passing reception touchdowns last week. I think he's a must own if you own Derrick Henry, and he's still not owned in all leagues on our site. So if you're a Henry owner, go grab him. I don't think his usage is going to be great on a weekly basis as long as Henry's healthy, but Henry's had some injury issues the last couple seasons. So I think Hilliard's definitely a guy I would target on waiver wires if you own Henry or you're looking for a bench spot for your team. All right, let's talk about the receiver position now, Logan. How about a couple receivers you're looking at on waivers this week?
Yeah, 2 receivers I'm kind of going to be looking at through the waivers is Kyle Phillips and Curtis Samuel. Kyle Phillips is only owned in 3% of leagues on RT Sports. So, I mean, he's going to be available, and he should be available in your league unless it's a very deep dynasty league. He's a rookie wide receiver this year, and he actually led all receivers in week 1 with target percentage for routes ran. He ran only 20 routes in week 1's matchup, and he got targeted 9 times, getting 6 catches for over 60 plus yards. And I really like that percentage with Kyle Phillips. He's kind of settled into like that Julian Edelman role almost in that week 1 role with the Titans. And I like him moving forward. And I think he could be a sneaky pickup on the waivers this week. Another player is Curtis Samuel. I kind of talked about him earlier with Carson Wentz, but he's kind of getting into that Debo role with San Francisco. He had 4 rushes, 17 yards. He had finished number 13 overall wide receiver in week 1, and he had 11 targets as well. They just wanted to get him the ball, and they got him the ball in different unique ways with screens and end arounds as well. And he's also had a touchdown in week 1, so I like his value.
Yeah, I like Curtis Samuel a lot too, Logan. I think he's going to be a heavily targeted player in that offense. You got to remember last year he was hurt, and he has a history with Ron Rivera as well. So
yeah, he had a great year in Carolina 2 years ago,
yeah.
and high expectations were last year, and that injury kind of derailed that.
People kind of forgot about him with Jahan Dotson, who looked good as well. Jahan Dotson. So interesting to see what Samuel does the rest of the year. A couple guys for me. I like Josh Palmer a lot. He did not do much last week. He just caught a couple passes, but Keenan Allen's already banged up. He's not expected to play. They have the Thursday night game. Palmer should move into the starting lineup in one of the best pass offenses in all of football. He made big plays last year. He's a good red zone target. He can stretch the field. He's available in more than 60% of the leagues on our site as well. So he's out there in a lot of leagues. He's probably going to start this week. I think he's going to be a good play, and he has the potential for the big game. So I like Palmer a lot in the short term, especially when Keenan Allen's out of the lineup. Another guy I like too is Zay Jones with Jacksonville. So he actually played the second most of all the receivers for Jacksonville last week. He was on the field for 83% of the snaps. He got a lot of work. He caught 6 passes for 65 yards on 9 targets. I think Jacksonville is going to be playing from behind a lot this year. So that means he's going to be on the field often, and I think he's going to get a lot of targets. So I like Jones. I think he's a good pickup for this week. He's available in 93% of leagues as well. So those are a couple options at receiver that I like. Let's move on to tight end now, Logan. How about tight end you're looking to target?
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at targeting Robert Tonyan for tight end through the waivers. Week 1 was probably the worst position ever for tight ends. I mean, it was very bad. Andrews had a weak game. Pitts had an awful game. Kittle was injured. Dawson Knox got a point. If your tight end got more than 12 points, you were just jumping up and down.
Cole Kmet, no catches too, Logan. Cole Kmet didn't have a catch.
They had also that, yes. So the top 5 tight ends for week 1, it went Travis Kelce, OJ Howard, Taysom Hill, Gerald Everett, and Will Disley from last night, his long touchdown catch. So it was a very weak field with tight ends in week 1. I think Rodgers is going to rely more on his veteran receiving and tight end group. He had a Christian Watson wide open for a touchdown that just dropped through his hands, and then came back to Tonyan with 5 targets in the game this past weekend. He had 3 receptions over 30+ yards, and I expect him to find the end zone this week. So I'm going to be targeting him.
All right. I like Tyler Conklin, kind of under the radar, but he won that tight end job in New York before the season started, beat out CJ Uzomah. He had 4 catches for 14 yards and a touchdown, scored 11.4 fantasy points last week as a starter for New York. I think his catches are going to go up on a weekly basis. I think he's going to get a lot of good targets. I think he's going to end up being a decent backup for fantasy teams, especially when Joe Flacco's in the lineup. I like him a little better at that point. But either way, I think Conklin's a guy that could be a productive fantasy player. Like you said, that position was awful last week, and he was one of the few guys that found the end zone at tight end. So I think Conklin could be a good sneaky pickup for a lot of fantasy teams. So we like to give streaming defenses also for each week. A lot of owners like to, just target defenses through the waiver wire. So each week we're going to give you some streamers to consider. Logan, how about a streaming defense for all those?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Cleveland Browns as my number 1 stream option. They're currently only owned in 50% of leagues on RT Sports. They only allowed a total of 261 yards against Carolina, who had pretty high expectations with Baker coming in, a home opener against the Browns as kind of a revenge game. And they had 4 sacks along with a turnover with Cleveland defense. And they're going to be having their home opener now against the Jets, who struggled mightily. The only offense probably worse than the Jets week 1 was the Cowboys, in which that was something else. So Flacco had 59 pass attempts in week 1 for the Jets, and because they got down very early. So if he's having another 59 pass attempts against Cleveland Browns defense, I expect a couple interceptions this week. So I'm going to be targeting them as my stream.
He might not make it out alive if he has to attempt 59.
That is very true.
That pass rush is relentless for Cleveland. Holy cow. All right. My streaming defense, I like the Chicago Bears. They're owned in just 14.3% of our leagues. So they're out there nearly every league. They scored 12 fantasy points last week against the 49ers. I know the conditions were terrible, so that probably played a factor in a lot of it. But they still have a very good defense, and they play the Packers this week. They were absolutely a disaster offensively last week. Did not look good. That passing game did not look good. I think the Bears could be another good play this week, a good pickup against an offense that looks to be struggling right now. So those are our streaming defenses. Those are all of our waiver wire options for this week. I have an article up on the site as well, so there's more options on there. Don't forget to check that out. It's called Wavering, just like the name of this video. So Logan, appreciate you joining me once again on the Real-Time Fantasy Sports Show. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Of course. Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
We'll do it again here in the near future. So again, thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video as well. We really appreciate it when you subscribe to the channel, and we appreciate everybody watching. So this has been Jeff Paur for Real-Time Fantasy Sports.
And this has been Logan Glaser from RealTime Fantasy Sports.
Have a great day, everyone.